Welcome to Rapid Retro Reviews, where we go back in the day to play some old school bangers and failures. I recently went to go see Nosferatu in the theaters, and it was awesome. 10 out of 10 would recommend. It really put me in a mood to play a game where I could slay some vampires, so load up your crossbow and spin up those Tojo blades because we're traveling to Transylvania to play 2004's Van Helsing. Van Helsing is an action-adventure game on the PlayStation 2 and original Xbox based off the 2004 movie, Van Helsing, starring Hugh Jackman. Before we talk about the game, I do have to mention that after I beat the game, I went back and I watched the movie, and it's shit. But we're not here to review the movie, let's get into the game. The game was developed by Vivendi Universal Games, which I had never even heard of before. I went to do some research to see what other games they had made, and it turns out they make a bunch of movie tie-in games and some Game Boy Advance games. But the best thing that I found out is they were formerly known as Cuck Software. Isn't that just great? The plot of the game follows the same plot of the movie, of course, although it's watered down quite a bit. I honestly had no idea what the fuck was going on with some of these side characters when I was playing through the game, besides the main goal of having to kill Dracula. When I watched the movie after finishing the game, things made way more sense. The comic relief character Carl, who plays Faramir in The Lord of the Rings, was completely left out of the game for some reason. There's also this ghost character that you follow around in the first couple missions. Who is this asshole? He's not in the movie. Visually, the game looks like an average PS2 game, and it's really nothing special. It's pretty cool though. Hugh Jackman and Richard Roxburgh reprised their roles as Van Helsing and Dracula in the game from the movie, and the voice acting is pretty damn good at times.
We were brothers once, you and I, in the Holy Order, until you betrayed me.
If what you say is true, why? Why would I betray you?
So there's something off about Van Helsing's face, and it's kind of hard to explain, but this doesn't happen with any of the other character models. There's something going on with Van Helsing's eyes that just make his eyes look like very unnatural, and like he's almost going cross-eyed, or his eyes are wandering in weird directions. So go ahead and look at this clip here first. Okay, so something is off, right? Now let's slow it down and take another look. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm the one with the fucked up eyes. Let's move on. It can be very confusing on where you're supposed to go at times. I found myself running in circles on multiple occasions trying to find my way through the level to the next area, and at times I had to even look up where the fuck I was supposed to go. You also have zero control over the camera, and you're locked into a fixed camera angle, similar to the early Resident Evil games. This can get annoying, as when the camera shifts angles, Van Helsing will move in the direction that your stick is pressed, and also during boss fights, you can't even see the boss half the time as they're off-screen, and you can't change the camera angle. The gameplay is very similar to Devil May Cry, and I was getting some God of War vibes as well. Van Helsing starts off equipped with his signature dual pistols, Tojo blades, and a grappling hook, just like in the movie. As you progress across the 12 missions of the game, you'll find more weapons, along with their alternative ammo types. You'll also be able to unlock health upgrades and ammo upgrades, as well as some new attacks as you accumulate relics, which is the in-game currency. When deciding what to spend your relics on in the in-game shop, there's really not too many options, and besides a few exceptions, you're almost always better off spending your relics on permanent health and ammo upgrades. The combat is very basic. As you enter an area, enemies will spawn, you kill them, and you move on to the next area. Each enemy type will be more weak to a certain type of weapon, which you'll need to figure out in order to clear them out the most efficient way. One enemy might be weak against the shotgun, while others are weak to explosive bolts, or melee attacks, etc. There's a good variety of enemies across the game, but there's one big problem with the design of the game. Each area will only have one type of enemy, so they're all the same in each area. So let's say you enter an area full of gargoyles. Just take out the shotgun, which is their weakness, and mow them down. This eliminates the need to swap weapons during combat and makes the gameplay very stale. The gameplay would be much more dynamic if there were multiple different enemy types in each area, and you had to switch back and forth between all your different weapons in order to clear out that area the most effective way possible. But really, you can just win most fights in the game by standing still and holding down the fire button, which isn't very fun.
Run! Run for your life while you still can!
The difficulty of the game starts off stupidly easy, and things get slightly more difficult as you make your way into the second half of the game. This makes the first half of the game mind-numbingly boring until you actually have to try. It's a bit more fun when you actually have to learn enemy and boss attack patterns and avoid getting hit by dodge rolling or jumping. It would have been nice if you were able to select to play on hard mode on your first playthrough, but unfortunately you need to beat the game on easy or normal mode to unlock hard mode. I hate when games do this in general, like, oh, you're too much of a bitch to play on hard mode, why don't you just start on easy? At the end of each mission, there's a boss fight. Most of the bosses are extremely easy and can be beaten on the first attempt, with a few exceptions. There's a handful of bosses that have huge difficulty spikes, such as the fight with Demon Alira. Her attacks will melt through your HP bar, and she has this bullshit grab that has a huge hitbox. I felt like I was fighting a Dark Souls boss, and this was hands down the hardest boss in the game. It was actually kinda nice having a challenging boss fight for once after playing through the whole game without needing to try very hard at all. After a bunch of attempts, I was able to beat her, and it was pretty satisfying. Now that she's out of the way, it's on to the final boss, Dracula. He's not nearly as difficult as Alira was, and I think I beat him on my third try, whereas she took over 15 attempts. Even previous fights against Dracula earlier in the game were arguably more difficult than the final encounter. Also, in the final battle of the movie, Van Helsing turns into a werewolf to defeat Dracula. It would have been cool if they implemented this into the game somehow, maybe as a second phase of the final boss fight. Instead, you just get a final cutscene that ends the game pretty abruptly, and then the credits roll. There's a special thanks in the credits where the developers thank some mailing list for providing hours of cheap entertainment. I would love to know what cheap entertainment they were seeing. You're given the option to resume the game on a New Game Plus file and up the difficulty to hard, or start a new playthrough. There's secret challenges and cheats to unlock if you want to play more of the game, but I was pretty done with the game after my one playthrough. My rating of Van Helsing is a 5 out of 10. It's not the worst game ever, but it's pretty mediocre as can usually be expected from a movie-based game, and this is based on a movie that I personally don't think is that great. I really only had fun during a handful of boss fights, and was overall very bored during my playthrough. Unless you're a huge fan of the Van Helsing movie, then just skip out on this one and play some Castlevania instead.
You have done me a great service. You have freed me from my suffering.
Thanks for watching this episode of Rapid Retro Reviews. If you enjoyed, please be sure to drop a like and hit that subscribe button to join the Nasty Nation. I'll see you guys on the next one.